о самых сложных проблемах, стоящих перед современным миром. Присылайте ваши вопросы заранее на наш email info@rusa.fm или во время передачи по СМС 347 460 08 77.
Добрый день всем, кто сейчас настроен на радио РУСА. Наконец-то в эфире моя передача, самая любимая Thank God It's Tuesday. Меня зовут Анна Пекерман. Она совершенно потрясающая, потому что в ней принимает участие, точнее, ее ведет самый именитый, самый великий, самый лучший раввин нашего времени, раввин Маниса Фридман, который уделяет нам вот это время и очень-очень много света приносит в нашу жизнь. И к сожалению, 3 недели мы не могли с ним общаться, потому что у него были семинары, он учит и делает это совершенно потрясающе. И мне посчастливилось быть на одном из его семинаров вот в эти последние выходные, поэтому я тоже очень вся вдохновлена и счастлива, и излучаю свет. Вот надеюсь, что мы сейчас часть этого света сможем также и вспрыснуть в наш эфир, в ваши уши, в ваши сердца, и ради этого, на самом деле, эта передача и существует. Сегодня вот как раз и хотим поговорить о том, как можно из плохого сделать хорошее, или в плохом видеть хорошее, или как повернуть плохое в хорошее, потому что лучше всех это как раз вот и делает, объясняет раввин Маниса Фридман, так что не теряя ни секунды больше времени, перехожу к нашему любимому собеседнику, Rabbi Manis Fridman. Hello, thank God it's Tuesday. So good to see you. I just shared with our audience that we haven't seen you for a while because you've been teaching, and I've been lucky enough to catch some of those teachings and get inspired. So thank you so much. And I think we lost connection. Okay, тогда сейчас...
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Okay, let's see what we can do.
So for now, I'm still going to continue saying how fantastic it was to spend the last Shabbat with you and get inspired by you and by many other wonderful teachers of Beis Hana. And it was probably one of the best, most memorable Shabbos I will ever remember or will ever have. So thank you so much. And the question today, because we're about to embark on the saddest day for Jewish people, the day of Tisha B'Av, where a lot of bad things happened. We lost 2 temples on that day, and many other terrible things in history happened throughout our years. And basically the question is, when there is such a bad day, it's a day of mourning, it's a day of sadness, what can we see good in this day? Because basically what I took most away from the Shabbaton, from your lectures and from all your lectures, is that if you don't see the positive in everything, you're not looking at it the right way. So what about Tisha B'Av? What about when there's so much destruction and sadness? What kind of positive aspect can we find in this particular day?
Thank you for the report on the retreat. It was kind of special. I mean, what could be better than a group of Jewish women full-time immersed in learning and discussing, growing and practicing? What could be better? So, there is a very big difference between sadness and grief. Grief, unfortunately, is a necessary part of life. It's the appropriate reaction to tragedy. If we couldn't grieve, we wouldn't be healthy. Sadness is not useful at all and is never justified. Because sadness is more like quitting, giving up, feeling discouraged. That's never a positive thing. Grief motivates people. If something really bothers you and it really is uncomfortable and unacceptable, then we go ahead and we do something about it. So it's a strong motivator, and it's a symptom of life. Sadness is lifeless, and that's why it's never kosher. It never leads to anything. Certainly nothing good. So we have to be careful. Tisha B'Av is a day of mourning and grief, not sadness. And the difference is significant. So we would check ourselves in the course of Tisha B'Av during the day. We would check ourselves to see, are you grieving or are you sad? Are you just sekrochen? Or are you really grieving something serious? And if you're not grieving, then knock it off. Don't walk around moping. So it's a serious fast day, and it's a long fast day because it starts the night before. In our case, Saturday night. It goes through Sunday night. So hopefully it'll be the last time we need to grieve anything, because we are promised that these days, the 3 weeks, the 9 days, the day of the 9th of Av itself, all these days will eventually become days of joy and happiness. Because, it always turns itself around. So the darker and the more dismal, the more joyful it will become.
Rabbi Friedman, would you said that, and you said it all along throughout the entire time we've been speaking, is that we do need to see positive even in the darkest places. Is there anything positive that we can see when there is grief? Can grief be for a positive purpose, for the good? Is there good in grieving? I mean, how can we turn grief around? Or can it be turned around?
Can and it should. We're reading in the Torah portion of this week. Moshe is reviewing the 40 years, reminding the people of all the mistakes they made. And he says, before we were going to enter the land, you suggested that we send spies. And I thought that was a good idea, and I chose the best of you, the heads of the tribes. And you went and you came back and you gave a negative report. And the people said, it's because God hates us that he took us out of Egypt, so that we would now be slaughtered by the people in Canaan. And Moshe says, did you notice the 10 plagues in Egypt? Did you notice the miracles that God performed for you? Did you notice how he split the sea for you? Did you notice how he had you leave Egypt with with an incredible wealth. Did you notice how he straightened the path for you so that you shouldn't even hurt your toes? And you say God hates you? It is so absurd that it's hard to explain. The people were not stupid people. How could they possibly claim that God hates them after all they saw? So Rashi says, really, they hated God. And that's called, in psychology, that's called transference. Because they hated God, it seemed to them that God probably hates them too. So they were really imposing their own feelings on God. But even that is so absurd. How could we be so mistaken? It's mind-boggling. And we spoke about this over the weekend. Every time we think it got so bad it can't get any worse, it always gets better. Throughout the Torah says, oh, yeah, and this, you did such a terrible, and God was so angry, it was so terrible, we had to start all over again. And start all over again. No matter how bad it became, the next sentence, the next word is, so we started all over again. Nothing ever ends in negative. And that's what the Torah is telling us over and over. How do we understand it? Everybody was evil. Everybody. Everybody. Except for one man and his 3 sons. Out of the entire world, everybody was bad. And very bad. Without chance of tshuva. You would think, okay, it's all over. If it gets that bad, what's left? Call it off, cancel the world, and forget about it. No, Noach was cute. Noach found favor in God's eyes. So God said, come, let's start all over again. It's always positive. The punchline is always positive. You ever marvel that Cain kills Hevel, and God starts a whole conversation with him? The first murderer in history kills his own brother. God has a conversation. Where is your brother? Am I my brother's keeper? Your brother's blood is very upset and he's crying. Well, does that mean that wherever I go, people will just kill me on the spot? God says, no, I'll make you a sign to protect you from people killing you. But you gotta get your act together. Isn't that an amazing conversation? Unbelievable. So, on the one hand, you can say, it wasn't murder the way we think of murder. It was a different world back then. Life meant nothing. Live, die, who cared? So you can't look at it in the same way that we look at somebody who went to a school building and shot up a bunch of kids. It's not the same. Can't be the same. So God can't react the same way. Maybe God was feeling, I guess I didn't warn you about what happens when you hit people over the head too many times. You can actually kill them. I didn't make that very clear to you, did I? So,
Rabbi Friedman, but death is death. Why should it be treated differently under different circumstances? And who should it be treated differently by under different circumstances?
death is death, but murder is not murder. Because, there's murder 1, and there's murder 2, and there's involuntary manslaughter, and there's crime of passion, and there's... So murder is not so simple. Yeah, death is death. And even that, who knows? Back then, when life was brand new, hard to imagine. So we got to keep things in context. That's really very important. I think we spoke about this also. Yosef and his brothers, his father made him a coat. The brothers were jealous of him. You're not studying the story in context. These are the greatest, holiest people that ever lived. The heads of the tribes, Yehuda, Reuven, Shimon, Levi. We're not talking about imbeciles, grown men who are ready to kill their brother over a coat. It's not in context. If you think that that's what you're reading, it's not in context. You think you're reading about the guy next door? You're reading about the holiest of the holy people. So, keeping it in context, try to understand what exactly is going on there. So, concerning turning grief into positivity. So the first thing is, grief is not negative to begin with. Negative is lifeless. Whatever is lifeless is negative. Every sign of life is a positive. Might not be the best, the preferred, but if it's alive, then it's positive. We prefer a sweet positive over a bitter positive. But as long as it is alive, even if it's a bitter pill, it can certainly be transformed, because life is already good and it's already life-giving, so you can extract the life from it. So, for example, if a loss of life is very grievous, it means that life is very precious. It's always balanced. To the degree that you love life, to that degree you grieve over loss of life. So when you're grieving over loss of life, in a sense you are celebrating life. Because if you didn't object to the loss of life, then your commitment to life is not that intense. So just the fact that we are told to grieve the loss of the temple, do we really today, You know anybody who's really upset? Oi, the temple, I need the temple, I miss the temple. I don't know anybody like that. I'm sure there are such people, but I haven't met them yet. So what are we grieving? What are we... Okay, it's an obligation. So you act like you're grieving, is that what it is? You make believe you're upset. No. The loss of the temple means a loss of godliness. It means that the unholy overwhelmed the holy. The darkness was stronger than the light. That's not an ancient, bygone event. It's happening all the time. Those were the particularly upsetting and inexplicable. How does something that holy can be destroyed by meaningless, evil people who have no purpose and no... Why is it that way? Why can stupidity overwhelm brilliance? Why can darkness overwhelm light? Why can bitterness turn even sweetness sour? That we grieve. And that's upsetting. That's upsetting. I mean, you talk to people today, they're so confused about everything, about their own identity, about their own gender, about their own body. Who did this? What evil, what stupidity has such a power to make complete morons out of intelligent people? What is going on? And parents don't take their kids out of public schools. What is that? They're intelligent, responsible parents. In every other way. I can't believe this. Stupidity still has so much power. We're so close to Mashiach already, and still? That's grievous. That's something we deeply regret, because that's not right. That shouldn't be. Shouldn't be. So, well, people believe that everybody has their choice and dysphoria, blah, blah, blah. What is that? All of a sudden, you're not making sense. You're saying God hates you when all the evidence shows that God loves you. What is wrong with you? Where has your head gone? It's very scary. Where are the responsible parents?
Rabbi
There should
Fridman,
not be a single child left in a public school.
those are all really good questions and good points. So my question would still go back. Where is the positive in all of this? Is there a positive in everything that's going on?
Are people really going to remain so blind? We're going to have an entire generation of massacred kids? It can't be. So really what's happening is, what would you say was the biggest passion, the biggest sin that people for the longest time were victims to? I think without any question, sexual passion. It was completely out of control. Sometimes it led to violence. But the sexual passion was out of control. Every possibility, every opportunity, every temptation, it was just everywhere all the time. You couldn't get away from it. Well, it seems like when you overindulge any passion, any pleasure, it loses its pleasure. This is what's happened to our society. The sexual pleasure is no longer pleasurable. It's lost its appeal. It's lost its power. So people went from heterosexual to maybe we should try some homosexual. That went for about 20 years. Now that's boring. Nobody cares anymore. Nobody's interested anymore. Instead of being the ultimate temptation and pleasure, it has become a burden. So now people are thinking, if I'm not heterosexual and I'm not homosexual, what in the world am I? Well, we don't know. We're run out of ideas. But really what's happening is not dysphoria. Not people hate their bodies. And it's the only explanation for why I have no sexual excitement. So here's an opportunity to reinvent sexuality because we messed it up. We ruined it, we destroyed it, we killed it. We need to reinvent it. We need to rediscover what intimacy is. We need to bring back the intimacy. We need to find the noble, dignified, awesome form of sexuality that it is meant to be, not some kind of game. This could transform our lives from one extreme to another. Teenagers are the first ones to understand this and appreciate this. They're still healthy enough, and they're just mature enough to understand the problem and want to fix it. So here's what we're dealing with. Time to reinvent sex itself, because it has gone sour.
Rabbi Friedman, so this gender confusion that is going on today, it's sexual, it's not psychological, because everybody is pushing the psychological aspect of this confusion, and it's hard to understand what's happening completely, but mainly it's seems to be the way it is presented, that it doesn't have much to do with sex, but has everything to do with how a person feels and identifies, and it seems like it's coming from the mind rather than from the physical aspect.
Our minds are not that sick. It's an attempt to explain away a phenomenon. The phenomenon is we are not interested in sex anymore. Now explain it. So you come up with these cockamamie ideas, and then you rush to live it, like every new crazy idea. You don't think it through, and many people are going to bear the scars. So the sooner we reinvent ourselves, the better.
Now, you just said that teenagers are kind of the future of this, and however, they're also the target. And this is where and again, all of this is very confusing because it's coming from the leaders. It's not coming from the people. It's coming from somewhere up above. So the question is, why are the governments, the leaders, the influencers are most interested in gender grooming, identity, sexual identity change, all these titles that people now have in the alphabet form? Why is it coming from there, not from the people? If people are the ones who are bored, then why it comes from authority?
I would hate to think what motivates those people. But it does feel like they're laughing their heads off. They make everybody crazy, and then they get together and laugh at everybody because, you know what we told them? We told them that and they bought it, and they believe it, and they're going to have operations, and then somebody is making fun of us. Yeah. But you see, here's another good example. All the laws of modesty. Men and women need to be separate. There should be no flirting, and there should be no dating, and there should be no casual sex and no free love. And we should dress modestly and speak modestly. See, we always thought that was because sex is so bad that we have to convince people to avoid it. That was never the case. The reason for modesty is to make sure that intimacy doesn't become so corrupted that we lose all interest in it. The reason for the modesty laws between husband and wife is so that they have a healthy, intimate relationship. Because without it, sex will just become soup. And people get bored with soup. So, another example of where we saw only a negative motivation, when really the motivation was pure positive. Preserve your intimacy. Don't destroy it. Because intimacy is marvelous. Intimacy is the key to life.
Rabbi Fridman, it's hard to imagine how to reverse whatever has happened recently. It just hit us like a wave from nowhere, and it is embraced. It seems to be embraced. So it's almost impossible to understand what could possibly, if it's a disease, what is the cure? If it's a sickness, what is the cure? If it's not, I don't know.
It's simply re-education. One of the telltale signs which indicated that this is going to happen very early on, maybe in the 50s or 60s, the uterus became the enemy. The uterus was a complication. It messes everything up. It ruins all the fun. So to men, women without uteruses would be so perfect. To the point where even women started to hate their uteruses. Now, obviously, a society that hates the uterus hates women. because you can't separate them. A society that hates the uterus hates children because you can't separate them. A society that hates the uterus has no interest in intimacy. That was the beginning of the end. If we're going to re-educate, starting with girls, you have to re-examine or reconsider the awesome blessing of a uterus, not a curse. Men used to be in awe of women, truly, genuinely in awe, because of the uterus. It is awesome. Somebody said, it's offensive to suggest that women are merely baby-making machines. Well, first of all, it is far from offensive. If all women were baby-making machines, that puts them at the top of the heap. Nothing more important than that. Oh yeah, there's more to women than making babies. For example, like what? Being a doctor. You mean a pediatrician, for example? A pediatrician is more important than the babies? A doctor is only valuable because human beings are valuable and women give birth to human beings. Otherwise, we don't need doctors or lawyers. So, is there anything more significant than making a baby? No, there's not. So I suggested to somebody, yeah, it is a little offensive to say baby-making machine. How about if we called it life-making machine? Not so offensive all of a sudden?
I didn't find the first one to be offensive either.
All right, the word machine is a little mechanical.
Yeah.
But if we want to save society, that we don't become absolutely extinct, we have to rediscover the uterus, rediscover the respect for it, and marvel at the miracle of it. Automatically, that gives women more respect. Men have more respect for women, things get better in the bedroom. Suddenly you don't mind being male or female or... So that's the good news. The good news is we were destroying our sexuality slowly but surely. Well, we finally have destroyed it. Now it's time to go back to the real thing, to the way things are meant to be. And then we can have a wonderful, godly society. So when we think about turning grief into pleasure, where exactly do we need to do this? What has gone sour and needs to be redeemed? Well, sexuality, certainly. Without it, we're doomed. If we hate it, we suffer terribly. So it would be a good place to start.
Rabbi Fridman, amazing. We started out with a mission today to show positivity, to find something good in destruction, and you just did that. Not in the area where I thought, but in the area where it actually matters even more. At least in this day and age, and that is, of course, priceless as always. Rabbi Fridman, amazing. Thank you for this hour of wisdom. Thank you for your time. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you for setting us straight and giving us a positive view of what is going on, even when it looks pretty bad.
I think if people got excited about this, it won't be difficult to turn it around, because what we're doing is unnatural. What we need is to go back to nature. That should be easy.
Well,
so how do you make babies? What does it mean to make a baby? I haven't thought about that in centuries. We need to think about it.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Fridman. Absolutely priceless, phenomenal, and I hope everybody takes away a lot. I'm sure that they do. And honestly, now I'm just have nothing but to look forward to our next Thank God It's Tuesday, where we can hopefully do our best in this little period of time to somehow make the world just a tiny bit better, or maybe a lot better if people are paying attention. Yeah. Thank you so much. Be well, have a wonderful rest of the week, and thank you again very, very much. Ну а сейчас я хочу всех еще раз поблагодарить за то, что вы были с нами, за то, что вас интересует вечное, правильное, доброе, и за то, что вы стремитесь к тому, чтобы сделать этот мир и себя в нем лучше. На этих словах я, Аня Пекерман, и передача Thank God It's Tuesday. Прощаюсь со всеми до следующей недели.
Каждый вторник в 12:10 один из самых известных раввинов нашего времени, Манис Фридман, в прямом эфире отвечает на вопросы наших слушателей. Вы услышите мнение самой мудрой книги человечества – Библии, о самых сложных проблемах, стоящих перед современным миром. Присылайте ваши вопросы заранее на наш email info@rusa.fm или во время передачи по СМС 347 460